Welcome to the Loomis Show. If it's your first time here, you know the deal. Hit that like button, subscribe. And I said this on an ad that I was doing for this specific episode over on my Instagram page, saying that it's not even for the channel. It's people need to hear the story that's about to come up. Kevin Donaldson, retired police officer, went through PTSD, went through it all. He's got a podcast out there called The Suffering Podcast. He had a great interview on Soft White Underbelly. He was mentioned on Joe Rogan. I found him about 3 years ago, but just established contact about a week ago. And I'll just let Kevin do the talking. And you guys enjoy this episode. And I suggest listen and never, ever be afraid to open up if something inside is really bothering you. Now, to the show. And there he is, Mr. Kevin Donaldson. Kevin,
What's
how
up,
you
brother?
doing, my man?
What's going on, man? Pleasure to be here.
No, the pleasure's all mine, my friend. I always seen you around. Recently, I seen you like on Instagram. I think you were talking to Anthony Ruggiano and the Suffering Podcast, which, by the way, everyone, the link for that is in the description. So give that, though, definitely a subscribe. But I was always into, before we get like all, like, what I tell all my guests usually, I like to say, let's go back, like, to the beginning and, we just have a conversation. But I was very interested in people like, Jocko Willink and like people like that they helped me get like sober. And then I came like across you and like with the jiu-jitsu like stuff and like the mindset and just knowing what you've been through and how it's post-traumatic success that
There is such a thing as that, right? There is such a thing. People think that when you're labeled with something like post-traumatic stress, that it's forever, it's eternal, it's going to define you. Yeah, it's going to define you, but it doesn't have to define you in the negative ways. It can define you in the positive ways. And that's what people don't realize about anything in life. If I know people that have had their legs blown off overseas. I know people that were born deaf, born blind, all this stuff. And if you learn to come to terms with your darkest parts of life, and they actually become your strengths. And that, when I say post-traumatic success, post-traumatic stress has actually become my strength. Where if you go back 7, 8, 9 years ago, I never told anybody I was a cop or I was retired. I was embarrassed by the way I reacted to my situation. So, but now if I look at it, it put me right in the spot that I was supposed to be in. And put me here, put me on the Loomis Show, right? Connected me with you. But that's the thing. It's taught me how to trust my gut.
It goes back to like if nobody ever has scars or ever had any tough times or anything like that, like, you know what I mean? Like that old saying, tough time make tough men. Like, you know what I mean? Like to get through them, like to get through those times. And that's what I really wanted you on, is because, I used to have just like, it was just basically mafia, like a truth. That was the name of the old show, and our truths and reviews. Now it's just the Loomis Show, which anything goes. But I'm all into like the, how do you get over like that? Like, having guests on like yourself that's seen a lot of stuff. And, post-traumatic success for me, the way I read it was that, yes, PTSD was absolutely involved, but your success, because I don't want to say you get all the way through it, because I'm sure there's still stuff in your head, but you work and your way through it by expressing yourself, by whatever you do on your, however, which we'll get into, if you don't mind. But let's just take it back, though, to where you're from and let the audience know a little bit about, a little bit about your backstory.
So I grew up in the Atlantic City area in South Jersey. I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s. I stayed there all the way through high school. And I grew up in an era where the mob ruled. Mob ruled everything. I went to a Catholic high school. All the mobsters are Catholic. They all sent their kids to Catholic school. One of my memories about it was there was some sort of fight. So I went to school with the Leonetti's kids and Scarfos and the Merlinos and all those people. And we knew, even as a little kid, we'd see them walking around. We knew who they were because kids have this thing. Like kids learn to trust their gut. They know when somebody is a serious guy, right? They might not know why he's a serious guy, but they know, they have that instinct. So, we knew they were serious guys. We didn't quite know why. We saw their names in the papers occasionally, but these were the people I went to school with. There was one incident where there was a fight. There was some sort of disagreement. And we're watching from the second floor of my high school. And I'm looking down in the parking lot, and Joey Merlino was there and somebody else was there, but the priests were out there sort of trying to intervene in whatever was going on because there was about to be a fight or something going on in the parking lot. But that was normal. I mean, that's that area. That's what happens around there. And we never really thought much about it. We knew Atlantic City was dirty. There was never any bones about it. But I will tell you this. While they did a lot of bad things, Philly and Eddie Kidd killed Vincent Falcone in Margate, put him in a trunk. You can look it up on YouTube. There's a picture of it. And I played baseball against Vincent's kid, who used to, incidentally, Scarfo lived on Georgia Avenue and Leonetti lived right next to him. This kid, he was nuts. He used to throw Molotov cocktails on the front porch of Scarfo's house. Like, you're absolutely insane. But the Scarfo kids, I kind of felt bad. So Mark was the one that was closest to me, and that was Scarfo's youngest kid. And I always felt bad for him because his dad was on trial. His dad was, he got arrested. He got popped in like 86. He didn't go to trial in Mays Landing until like 88. And here's this kid, and he's sort of got to live with all this stuff. He's got to live with the fact that his father is like Nicky Scarfo Sr. was a savage. I'm going to tell you right now, he was about 5'7", and he was a savage. He killed Sally Testa because he didn't like Salvatore getting press. It was crazy. But Mark used to get the crap knocked out of him. Like I watch people who I knew throw him up against a locker, and he Mark had a real bad mouth. He just liked to start shit. I watch guys throw him up against a locker, and I'm like, damn, man, don't you know who his father is? I know he's got a big mouth and all, but give him a pass, man. It's not worth it. And then poor Mark, he ended up in 88. He tried to hang himself, and he ended up being in a coma for like 26 years before he finally passed. But that was sad. Kids are a lot like dogs, right? I'm a big believer. I'm a big dog lover. I'm a big believer there are no bad dogs. Just like I believe there are no bad kids. It's the parents' influence on them that sort of puts them in a position they don't deserve to be in. And that Mark's a tragic story. It's a shame, man. I always felt bad about that.
Yeah, I know. And I saw when Leonetti was talking about that, with his kid and stuff like that. And then he said he wanted to get out because, that story. And what you just said about Sally, but because Scarfo had an ego, and I think he had a small man complex. So he was just, he was. I heard a story about him that he was riding a horse one time, and he fell off the horse, and he threw the horse off a cliff because he thought the horse wanted to kill him.
I never heard that story, but I wouldn't be surprised. But oddly enough, Scarfo's oldest son, Chris, I won't say his last name because Chris changed his last name. My mom worked for him. He's still local. And I'll tell you what, he looks just like his old man. He's the spitting image. As a matter of fact, if you get Philly and Eddie's book, Mafia Prince, there's a picture of Chris and him together at a wedding. And listen, Chris is a decent guy. Chris, he really is. He's a decent guy. And he'll tell you, he told me many times, listen, I'm out of that life. I don't need to deal with that shit no more. And that's the end of it. Because that's a very difficult thing for somebody to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. Absolutely. And when you're speaking about the kids, and even like you, though, I mean, like, it's just probably like normal to you. That's just what you've seen, straight out of life. Like, but let me ask you this, though. How come you never thought about going in that direction?
So when I was a kid, I was a criminal. I was a criminal for different reasons. Okay. I was always looking for an identity because my home life was really bad. I had a very abusive father, and I had a very abusive mother, and I had an older brother who was equally as abusive to me. So I was told from a very early age that I was lazy, I was fat, I was all these bad things. My father used to call me the laziest white man alive, very racist man. And I never understood that as a kid. All I knew is I was less than. So when you're told that over and over again, and especially in those formative years, it gets imprinted into your brain. So what do? You try to find a way out of that. So maybe if I am the toughest kid in school, so I was a horrible bully. And the one thing about bullies, I'll tell you, is they're never okay. They're never right in the head. There's something going on at home. And what they do is they look for somebody who they believe to be less than, and they gravitate towards them. It just makes them feel a little bit better. So the one kid I bullied it was a Puerto Rican kid named Jesus. I won't say his last name. I never met anybody named Jesus before, and he bullied this kid, and he was a nice kid. He was just I was such a jerk because he was such a nice kid. He was a little heavy. Parents were poor. I was poor too, but I always saw him as less than. He's greasy, just different. And we tortured this poor kid. The problem he left school in 8th grade. And after he left school, it was that instant remorse and instant regret. And I spent the better portion of my teenage years and especially my adult life trying to stand up for those kids who are doing that. What he should have done is really punch me in the mouth, and it probably would have ended everything. Oddly enough, the caveat, the ending to that story is I searched for Jay. We call him Jay. I searched for Jay for years. And then the advent of social media made it a little easy. But his first name, Jesus, and his last name is very common in the Puerto Rican world. As a matter of fact, I could say it because I don't think he would mind. His name is Jesus Aponte. Everybody calls him Jay Aponte. Go look up Jesus Aponte on Facebook. There's about 4 million of them. But I would take 5 every single day, and I would message him. And I would message him, hey, did you go to this school? Hey, did you go to this school? Well, I get a message back, and he's like, yeah, I went to that school. And I said, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I was a real jerk to you, and I apologize. And we did this over a phone call, and he goes, man, we were just kids. I forgive you. And I'm like, dude, can't you just call me an asshole or something, man? That would make me feel so much better. Give me something. I deserve something. But no, he was graceful. Turns out he's a cop in New York, and man, me and him are closer than we ever been. But here's the problem. I threw away a 30-year friendship, a potential friendship with somebody who I should have been friends with because I was not okay. So when you're finally looking for that identity, right? I thought maybe I'd be the tough kid, or maybe I'd be the biggest thief. I stole everything. I stole a hot tub out of a pre-construction house. I used to steal condoms. I was freaking 11 years old. What am I stealing a condom for? I'm not going to use it. I had this whole condom collection. I would steal anything that wasn't nailed down. Well, you know what? That didn't do anything. Being a tough guy didn't do anything. I thought, well, maybe if I do some drugs, maybe if I'm the druggie, that's what we used to call them, druggies. Maybe if I do drugs, maybe that'll give me some sort of identity. That didn't work. My only saving grace was I was somewhat intelligent. Sometimes by scams, sometimes just by natural ability. It wasn't because of hard work. I was a good actor, and I was a good scam artist. So one of the things I used to scam is I hated biology and was taught by a nun, Sister Mary Dominic, who I know is passed. She loved Notre Dame football, and I hated biology, but I love football. So my homework was to go watch Notre Dame football, come in on Monday and talk to her about it, watch old films, watch everything. And I ended up getting a B in that class, and I didn't do shit. I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't do anything. So I wasn't a good kid. I wasn't a real upstanding kid. But as far as that direction, I think the closest I ever got, and I don't ever think I told this on air anywhere. There was his first name escapes me, but his last name was Pisa. And he was out of Philly, and he would give us these football pools. You remember those when you were a kid, the football pools, you pick spreads, and if you pick 9 out of 10, you got X amount, 10 out of 10, you got X amount. And we used to run pools in our high school. And one day we used to sell them to the priests. Like the priests were in on them. And one day some priest got a bug up his ass, and he didn't want us to do it, and he shut it down. So we weren't bringing in any money, and we got called to come meet. And they're like, how come you're not bringing in any money? He thought we were stealing money. And that was an interesting moment because it was real danger. It was real danger. And thankfully, and then, after that, I was like, yeah, this ain't for me, because I got a taste of it, and I don't like that feeling. You're only as good as your last day in that arena. But my intelligence allowed me to go further. It allowed me to go to college, allowed me to play football in college because I was somewhat coherent. And that's really the only thing that got me out of that area. Because who knows, if I was still down there, the kids I used to hang out with, they've all done time. They stealing cars, B&Es, all sorts of shit. So I took myself out of an environment that I knew wasn't healthy for me, especially my home environment, but also the people that I hung around.
Gotcha. And not to jump though too far ahead though, but I saw your interview on Soft White Underbelly, and you said it. Yeah, you said something though that that just didn't. I didn't forget. And you said, I seen all these tough guys around, mob guys, this and that, but no one scared me more than my father. So when you tell me though this stuff though about you being a bully and all that, to me that's you could because what's going on with your home life. And I don't know if I'm getting too personal here or whatever though, but I guess your father really treated you just like dog shit in a way. I mean,
I was the bastard child of the house. I never I was that kid who struck out in Little League and got screamed at. I was the kid who got hit quite a bit. I was a kid who was abused, not only emotionally, I was abused sexually. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I was a broken child. And guess what? That made me a broken man in a lot of ways. It stuff that happens in childhood sticks with you because those are the years where you're sort of developing. You're developing mentally, intellectually, and emotionally. And when you have no foundation, if you listen to like a David Goggins, how are you going to build a house on a broken foundation? Or Jimi Hendrix song, Castles Made in Sand. Well, that's what that's about. You can't build anything because here's what happens. Each time you build up some sort of structure that looks right, it's the foundation's gone and it's just going to come crumbling to the ground. And the next thing you know, you try to you rebuild it again. What you really have to do is you have to dig down deep and you got to lay that foundation. That didn't happen for me until I was in my 40s. So I sort of just limped through life, succeeding. Like the people who have that happen to them often are very, very successful, but the stuff just keeps crashing down and crashing down. That's what happened to me.
So, like you mentioned, you're stealing everything that's not bolted down, this and that, all that. What led you to be a police officer?
Well, so I went to college and I decided to reinvent myself. So oddly enough, when I went to college, I stayed there. I became very obsessive compulsive because I took control back of my life. I had no control where I grew up. So I'm like, all right, I'm in a new area. I can reinvent myself. I can make people look at me the way I want to be looked at. Doesn't have to be reality. It just has to be the way I want them to see me. So that's what I did. All my clothes were folded perfectly. My laundry was done perfectly. My shirts were all hung up. Everything was just right. And I was able to get through college. But guess what? That's a facade as well. Junior year, I get kicked off campus. I wanted to be a teacher. And I get kicked off campus because I did something stupid. And I didn't get caught. I got away, but some people I were with got caught and I got thrown off campus. But I was allowed to stay in college. So I stayed in college. I got my degrees. I got a few degrees. And I went to go teach high school. It was something that I felt like I was called to, but like anything else, when you're in college, you're very idealistic. And when reality smacks you in the face, things change real quick. I found out that while I love teaching kids, I really didn't like other teachers. So that identity that I started building up to be an educator sort of just crumbled down to the ground. So I did a couple jobs here and there. I always worked. I sold cars. I traveled coast to coast for a software development company. And then one day I'm in the gym and a guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, did you ever think about being a cop?" The funny thing is my brother had been taking test after test after test to become a cop. And, New Jersey is very, very competitive when it comes to that job. So I never thought about it. I think the only thing I ever did was I applied for the New Jersey State Police once in 99. I got the letter somewhere. Now, mind you, I have no arrests on my record. I have no parking tickets. I have no trouble whatsoever. I have multiple degrees, postgraduate degrees. There is no reason in the world why I don't fit the criteria, at least to take the test. And they sent me a letter, said, you don't fit the criteria. What was going on in New Jersey State Police at the time is there was this big diversity push. So I just knew what it was, but I didn't care. So I was like, all right, whatever. I went along my way. But when this guy approached me in the gym, he ended up being the chief of police for the department I ended up working for. I was traveling coast to coast. I was traveling 4 weeks out of the month, and I was exhausted. I had no kids, and it was cool for like 6 months, but it weighs on you living out of a suitcase. So I took the job. I scored very well on the test. I was physically in the right shape, and I took the job in June of 2001. Off I go to the police academy in August, and we all know what happened in September of 2001. So it sort of changed everything forever.
Yeah, 9/11. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the genesis. It's not a real exciting or sexy story, but a job was offered to me. I took it as a job. I took it as a job because I was going to get my medical paid for. I had a pension. I had some sort of future. I found out the job was much different than what it appeared to me, or what I thought it was in my head.
Got you there. And so now you're like, I know it's not a sex story or whatever. No, I'm just going to be upfront, real with you. I disagree from how you were telling me with your childhood and everything like that. And then, like, when you end up going that route, not to mention how your father treated you and all that, and like, post grad, and like you still were able to, you must have something inside you that just keeps pushing you forward and forward. And I seen like when you were a cop. There is one thing that you never want to say though when you're a cop is that I think it's a quiet night or something.
Quiet. The Q word.
Yeah, could you touch on that story if you don't mind?
Sure. So you learn that very early on, right? Because the minute you say it's quiet, it's like, my God, the shit hits the fan. It's everything seems to go wrong. You'll get sudden deaths, you'll get a suicide, you'll get domestics, you'll get a burglary, you get car chases. So it gets crazy when people say that. And it's always the new guys who say it. You'll never see a veteran say that stuff because they know what it is. And I worked my whole career as a street cop. I was a fatal accident investigator, and because I loved it. I'm a math nerd, right? I love just figuring out puzzles. So what you're talking about in particular, I broke the rule. July 10th, 2013. We were working what's called a pitman schedule, a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. It was a Wednesday night, and there was big budget cuts in New Jersey, so all the officers had to share desk time. We did it in 4-hour blocks. My desk time was 11 to 3. So I go down, and we just sort of put the town to bed. It's a Wednesday night, and it was dead quiet. It's one of those nights. Quiet is the worst thing in the world because you actually want something to happen. Just get me out of the car, an alarm, 911 dialed in error, just anything, just to keep your mind occupied because it's boring. It's boring as hell, especially in a small suburban town. So I'm next to my partner. We're drinking our coffee, and I said, God, I just wish there was anything. It's so freaking quiet. I can't stand it. And then I went off we used to have to do plaza checks, just tug on doors, little strip mall type of things, just make sure everybody's secure. I pull into the parking lot, and the thing about police work is that a crack of a radio, just the first crack, your life is going to change. Your life has the potential to change in just like that. So about 10:45, crack of the radio comes up. The officer on the desk says, start heading to this particular address, open 911 call, unknown emergency. So when the 911 system was set up, police officers have to go. No matter what it is, misdial, dialed in error, it could be a real emergency, it could be nothing. But this address in particular, we kind of knew something was up because there was the resident had recently filed for a temporary restraining order against her ex-boyfriend, a gentleman by the name of Anthony Vocaturo. Now, I've been told not to say his name. I don't care. I'm going to say his name. So Anthony Vocaturo lived in Florida. And he had recently sent a picture of her with a Glock 9mm up to his head. Somewhere I have that picture. I haven't been able to find it, but I do have a picture of Anthony Vocaturo. So what the victim did was dialed 9. Very smart. This woman was very smart. Dialed 911 and threw the phone on the ground. So we start heading over there, and I could tell you the route I took. I could tell you how I turned around. We went lights, no sirens, because we don't want to alert anybody what's going on. It's probably about 3 or 4 miles away, 3 miles away, say. And the whole way there, we're going car to car between me and my partner saying, okay, here's how we're going to do this. It was a townhouse complex. This is how we're going to do this. We don't know what's going on. We're going to go up to the front door. Let's see what it is. Now, the one thing about a small suburban town is you don't see the volume that, say, an inner city like Newark or Atlantic City you'll see, so you become somewhat complacent. It was one of my things that happened that night. I was very complacent. I pull my car up right in front of the house. My cell phone was always in my duty bag. I never carried my cell phone to a job. And we go up to the front door. Behind the front door, we can hear yelling, but we can't really make out what they're saying. So we have to make contact with whoever's inside. That's our task. So I just take my fist and I bang on the front door. Through the door we hear, "Don't come in here. Don't come in here." Guy's yelling. So my partner goes off. There's like a little small front porch. My partner goes off and he goes around the back. There's only 3 egresses from the building. There's the back sliding door, the front door, and the garage. That's it. So the chances of the garage, we're here, we can see him, so he goes around the back. I go to my car, I get a Halligan bar. Halligan bar is like a fireman's crowbar. It's very heavy, and it's used for breaching doors. And, you know, the joke that I make is, I've heard this from people, why didn't you just kick in the door? And I said, because it's not 1970, and those doors are made of steel. We only let rookies do that, and that's basically just to make us laugh. So I go to get this thing, and on a signal, which was just a key up of the microphone, I start swinging the hammer end of this Halligan bar into the lock, because what you do is you hit right by the lock, you get the crowbar in there, and you pop the door. You break the door jamb, pretty much. Now, at this time, when my partner's around back, what Anthony Vocatoro did is he raised his gun to the door, to the front door. So I had 2 whacks in it this time, and if I would have breached that door, I was getting it. I was dead. When he realized that the game was over, he raised his gun to the woman who was seated on the ground, and he was going to kill her. He's going to shoot her. My partner exchanges gunfire with him. I'm standing by the front door. I can't see my partner. All I hear is pop, 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 pop. I hear about 4 shots, and they exchange gunfire. Drop the Halligan bar, and you're like, "Oh shit! What the hell?" Now all I'm thinking about is my partner okay? Is my partner okay? And at the time, we had one of our supervisor was sort of standing behind me, and I'm crouching down. Other cars start arriving from surrounding towns, so the front is covered. I'm just concerned about him. I go running around the back, and he's off there's a deck. He's off the deck a little bit, sort of telling us what's going on, tell us what happened. And he goes, I said, "Did you hit him?" He goes, "I have no idea if I hit him. I shot through glass." So when we go up on the deck, it was a sergeant, my partner, and myself. The stairs are off to the left, and there's patio furniture off to the right. Now I see that off to the right, and I'm looking at it from a tactical position. I said, I can see everything. I cannot see Anthony Vocatore. I can't see him. But I can see the victim. She's seated up against the wall with her knees to the chest in absolute distress. So I'm figuring if I go over to the right, I have a clear vision of everything. I can see the whole thing. Even we assumed wrongly that he went upstairs after gunfire. Our plan is to take one of the patio chairs, which were heavy metal, and throw it through the sliding glass door, and we go in. We're making entry. We're not waiting for the cavalry. We can't wait for the cavalry. There's been a gun battle here. We got to keep going. So with the sergeant and my partner off to the left of the sliding glass door, and myself off to the right, guns drawn, he throws the chair through the back glass. As soon as that glass shatters, I see the brightest light you'll ever see in your life. I hear a bang, but I don't know if you've ever shot a gun. It'll give you a little bit of tinnitus. If you just take your hearing protection and go like that, it'll give you, your ears will ring. None of that. I feel heat. I feel gunpowder. I knew what gunpowder hit my face feels like. It feels like somebody's throwing like a small amount of salt right in your face. And I hit the ground. Now, the bullet wiggles my left ear. It just sort of goes like this. No damage, no scarring, no nothing. I hit the ground. Now, when I hit the ground, there's a couple different types of people in this world, and you never know which one you are. Some people in those stressful situations will panic. They'll run away. And believe it or not, one of the cops there that night did that. I'll never forgive him for that.
Fight or flight.
And or fight, or fawn, or just play dead. And he ran. This other cop ran. I'll never forgive him. But thankfully, 2 of the other officers, they stayed. But so I'm sitting there on the ground. I'm calm, cool as a cucumber. I'm not panicking. I'm not scared. And I'm like, holy shit, he just shot at me. Now I see blood. There's a lot of blood. My shoulder hurts. And I was always told that when you shot, you might not know it. Now I'm wearing a bulletproof vest, but bulletproof vest does not cover my shoulders. My shoulder hurts. So I'm wondering, I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm like, oh my God. All right, well, I was so conscious that my keys, which we kept on our antennas, fell off. I saw it on the ground. I went, stopped, picked it up, put it back on. And I said, okay, well, this guy shot at police twice. So obviously he wants to die. I can't get out at this point. I'm trapped. If I try to crawl out, I'm 6'4", 230 pounds. I'm not crawling with any type of limberness or speed. If I do that, he's going to have a clear shot at me. So what he was doing is he was right behind the door jamb, and we couldn't see him. And all he did was just put the gun out and pop. Oddly enough, in my direction. So I'm sitting there, and now I had just had a young son at home. So my youngest son is 7, my oldest is 3. My wife's at home. This is about 11 o'clock at night. And I start thinking about them. I start thinking about my oldest son, my oldest son will remember me, but my youngest son will have no recollection of me. My wife will be left to raise these 2 boys, and there'll be memorial softball games and beefsteaks in my honor to help fund them. And it's crazy because this is the stuff that all went through my head. But basically, what I was doing was I was preparing myself to die. And I felt that. Okay, this is my last stand. I am General George Custer, and this is my last stand. But I'll tell you what, once I make my peace with everything, I said, if I'm going to die, I'm taking you with me. So I get in a shooting position. I got the guys off the deck. They're asking me, are you shot? And I was like, I don't know. My shoulder hurts, and I see tons of blood. So I'm just waiting there to die. And like I said, the boss of that scene, he went running. He never came back, left me for dead. But 2 guys who stayed, one guy covered the door. The other guy grabbed the back of my duty rig, my belt, and sort of assisted me along. And the whole time I'm trying to hold my gun off to the side because I don't want to get shot in the ribs. I don't have any coverage over here with my bulletproof vest. There's just a little bit of coverage down low. Fully expecting to get shot, but I don't. I get off. And I look at my arms. My arms are all chewed up because what I did when I went down after I was shot at, I fell all on that broken glass that was all over the deck, and it just chopped up my arms. I wasn't shot in the shoulder. I must have hit it going down. It wasn't anything. But we do see Anthony Vocatoro run up the stairs. There was like a little landing upstairs, and he runs upstairs. The victim, we're standing there watching this. The victim sort of just stands up real quietly and just hugs the wall and goes out the garage. So we're calling over the radio saying, hey, listen, victim's coming out, don't shoot. And they go get her. She's out. Now we have a barricaded suspect. We have no other danger. Game over. Stay in there all you want. We're done. But it's July, and my arms are all chewed up. I'm sweating bullets. It's stinging like a mother. And we hold perimeter for about an hour and a half to 2 hours until the state police teams unit, which is their version of the SWAT team, shows up and relieves us. So I'm very proud of the job that we did because we saved that life. We isolated the danger, and listen, as a cop, you just want to make a difference. You want to do the right thing, and that's what we did. We did the right thing. Nobody died. It was perfect. I was forced to go to the hospital. I didn't want to go to the hospital. I wanted to stay and see this thing out, but I was forced to go to the hospital. Now, let's go back a second. My car is still running in front of the residence. My car keys are in my duty bag, in my car. My cell phone is in the car. It's about 12:30 at night. Police wives will all talk to each other. And I was afraid somebody was going to call my wife saying, hey, there was a shooting in Roseland. Is your husband working? Yeah. And then she can't get in touch with me. So I was very conscious of that. They're bandaging up my arms, and I grabbed one of the EMT's phones, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I really did think I was doing the right thing. I called. My wife's cell phone number is like the one number I know off the top of my head. Nobody knows phone numbers anymore. So I call her from this unknown number at about 12:30 at night. I said, her name's Trisha. I said, Trisha, I was in a shooting. I'm okay. I'm not shot. I have to go to the hospital. I'll be home as soon as I can. Click. Oh, by the way, go have sweet dreams. You know, like I think I'm doing the right thing. All I did was just raise her anxiety when I probably didn't need to. But and then they trucked me off to the hospital. They picked the glass out of my arms. The hostage negotiator was able to talk him out, and he was arrested. Now, the sad part was, just as a postscript to that story, he attempted to kill 2 cops, and he was given 4 years. He was given 6 years. He did 4, so he's out. I know exactly where he is. I know exactly. He lives in Florida. I know exactly where he is. And man, that's sad, because I have friends who did 21 to 25 years, first time nonviolent drug offense. They got 21 years. Guy tries to kill a cop twice, gets 6, does 4. Crazy. Broken justice system.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah.
I mean, everything though that you just explained to me, you had to have learned a lot about yourself from that situation. And the fact that how you said, oh, maybe I should have done that with my wife. The fact that you were thinking about your wife, call your wife. The fact that when you were laying there and you were very conscious of that, because that's instinctual. No, but you could go to the academy, you could study, you could train, have the best shot, do study, to do this and that, get mace in the eyes, everything. You don't know how you're going to react till something like that happens, like you said before. And you had to have learned a lot about your inner self. The fact that you were conscious and your mind was going and even thinking of all the things and like, hey, they're going to have memorials for me and all that, that blows me no away. That just tells
Top 10
me
clearest I've ever been in my life. Top 10 most clarity I've ever had in my entire life. But
scared. Was it scared?
Never once was I afraid. And even when I accepted the fact that I was going to die, I still wasn't afraid. I made my peace. I did. I honestly made my peace. And they say, your life flashes before your eyes and stuff like this. It's kind of what it's like. It's like you see your kids growing up. You just have all these flashes and these visions. It's a real odd situation, and people who have never been there won't understand it. But I will tell you this. So there's a lot of people. One of the surprising statistics you'll hear is people who are in war, people who are in actual battles. And I heard this from a World War I vet in an interview, where you would be surprised how many soldiers mess their pants during battles. Doesn't mean they're a bad soldier, but just the fact that you're in mortal danger. And even as recent, I was just talking to a guy who's a Iraq war veteran, and he said, yeah, there's a common knowledge that you go to the bathroom before you go out. Like you take like a pre patrol, So there's people out there that will do that and freeze or run away. I was very grateful that I wasn't that person, because I've been in tough situations before. I've been in sticky situations as a kid. I've been in a lot of fights, and I knew how to handle myself. I was a boxer. So I was confident, but I was never tested like that. And I was glad that when that test came, that I passed. I could hold my head high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say, because like you said, you can't train for that. You
No.
cannot train for that whatsoever. And just the fact of you thinking like, right. And not when I meant scared, like, because like right when you saw that flash, like went down, like a lot of people would be thinking like, is he coming over right at, because they didn't have him immediately yet. Is he coming right after you to shoot you again? Like, and you just made immediate peace. That says a lot. Now, did you ever though think back though of that night and think like if things went different, does it bother you? Does it, do you have some PTSD from that night? Like, what if, well, a lot of people could look back and be like, man, I'm lucky. What if this happened? Or have you just accepted it and moved on? I want to know the mindset. What's really in the mind?
You know what? I did. If I look, that's a good question, because nobody's ever asked me that question before. And looking back on it right now, I did everything the way that I was trained to do. I was doing what I was paid to do. I was doing what I signed up for. and I have zero regrets about anything that I did that night. The only regret that I have is that the tactical position that I thought I was in was actually the worst position in the world to be in. All right, but and maybe I wouldn't have left my cell phone in front of the house when the car running, but that's a whole other story. But as far as tactically goes, as far as preserving the life of that victim in there who was in absolute distress, I wouldn't change a damn thing. Listen, if you asked me that question 10 years ago, there's a lot I would have changed, but I'm 12 years removed from it, almost a full 12 years. Looking back after 12 years, while it was initially the worst thing that ever happened to me, it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me because I went down a really, really bad rabbit hole. The following day, it kind of just hit me out of nowhere, and it created a lot of chaos in my life.
And that's what I wanted to say. So you just said if I asked you this 10 years ago, so then it like right after it happened, and then it did. It was screwing up your head.
Yeah, here's what I would have done. I wouldn't have gone on the deck. I wouldn't have gone on the deck because I loved being a police officer. I loved that job. It was a great job. We got to help people. We got to go to people when they didn't know, they didn't have anybody else to call. They're looking up for you for answers. And even though you might not have it, you have to stay stoic and you have to have that aura of authority just to put them at ease, to give them comfort, because that's
But
what
do
they're
you
doing.
though? Because some people ran away though from your situation, but you didn't, and the other gentleman who grabbed you and helped. I know that you're supposed to, but not everyone does.
That's
And
what the job was to me. The job was to me,
exactly.
it wasn't arresting bad guys. It wasn't car chases. Yeah, they were fun. They get your adrenaline going and stuff. But what it was to me was just making that one difference in one person's life, is showing up and you're there in front of them on their worst day, and you gave them
Yeah.
just a little bit of comfort. Maybe it was somebody at the last moments of their life. I've seen people take their last breaths more times than I want to count. I've seen people at the most vulnerable that they ever have been. And if they do make it through, like if you go to a medical call where somebody's really hurt, car accident where somebody is on the verge of death, they're going to remember you. They're going to remember your attitude. They're going to remember your face. And while you're not looking for that, you have those moments where people will come back and just say, "Hey, I remember you, and I really appreciate the job that you did." Man, I have awards, and you can have them. I don't want them. All right, but when somebody comes up and says, "Hey, listen, you made a real difference in my life that day," man, it makes everything worthwhile, and it realigns you on that job that I initially took as a job, but what it did is became my calling, or what I thought was my calling. Um, so I get discharged from the hospital, just to sort of tell you the tail end of that story. I get discharged from the hospital, and I can't wait to go home. I cannot wait to go home. There's some video of me at the scene afterwards, and I'm started giving the detectives my walkthrough of what happened. He gets talked out. I go and I write a report real quick, and I get home at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And I'm amped up. My adrenaline is pumping. So I hug my wife. She's obviously didn't go back to sleep. I hug my kids tighter than I've ever hugged them. And I go out for a run to try to burn off some of the adrenaline, and that didn't work. So I go walk my dog. That didn't work. My wife is just over the moon happy that I'm home. So that night, we plan to go out on a date night. Um, the devil comes home. I mean, my mother-in-law comes to watch the kids, and
Sorry.
yeah, sorry, I had to. I had to.
Go ahead.
She comes over to watch kids. Me and my wife go out to dinner,
Oh,
and we go to see a movie. We go see a movie called This Is the End. It's a Seth Rogen movie. It's back when Seth Rogen was sort of making his transition from being funny to not being funny.
mhm.
And there's a scene in the beginning of that movie, if anybody's ever seen it, where there's a big flash of light, there's a big bang, and it's sort of like the people who go on in life, they get sucked up to heaven in its bright light, but hell becomes earth, and the people who are in hell are just stuck here. So when that happened, I don't know what it was, whether it was the thud, whether it was the flash, or whether it was the sound. I don't know what it was, but I started sweating profusely. I couldn't breathe. I felt this huge pain on my chest. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? I can't sit still. I'm uneasy. Now, I can't really let my wife know what's going on. I cannot let her see this stuff. She's been through enough. I put this woman through hell just in the last 24 hours. So I sort of hide it from her and I say, you know what? My stomach's a little upset. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I go out in the hallway and I have, well, I can only describe as a full-blown panic attack. There's nobody in the hallway and I'm sitting there, I'm sweating, I'm trying to catch my breath. I'm doing everything I know at that point on how to calm myself down, and I just can't do it. Several times I try to go back in the theater, and theater's got those real heavy doors, and I try to pull it and it's like it's made out of lead and I can't move it and I don't want to come out. So like 15 minutes I'm out there. Finally, my wife comes out and says, hey, you okay? You coming back? I said, nah, go back in. I'll be right in. I'll be in a minute. Now, sometimes we think our spouses are stupid, but our spouses are actually smarter than we think. She knew something was up. She goes, you know what? This movie sucks. Let's go home. I don't walk out of movie theaters because especially at the time, movies are expensive and I could be a little frugal when it comes to that stuff. So I don't walk away from investment like that, but I did. I went home. That night, nightmares began, and they didn't stop for probably 8 months straight. I mean, constant, every night, nightmares. I'd wake up so wet that I thought that I pissed myself. I would just, and they were stupid dreams. They were like anxiety-filled dreams. I'd pull out my gun and the bang flag would come out like in the cartoons, or I'd pull my gun out and all the ammunition would fall out, the magazine would drop, and the ammo would be everywhere. I would have these night terrors. Like there was one time I must have been thrashing in my sleep, and my wife sort of grabbed me to jostle me awake, and I grabbed her arm, and I must have grabbed it really hard because it scared the shit out of her. That's when I removed myself from the bedroom. Okay, I can't do this. But I was changing. So that first nightmare was bad. That weekend, we go down to see my parents. We go down to the Atlantic City area, bring the kids down there. It would be a nice away game, and I'm sitting in the car, and I'm just very introspective, and I'm very quiet. I'm not sleeping. We go down there. My brother's a cop too, and my brother starts asking me questions about it. And I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I really don't want to talk about it. So when it's time to leave, and I didn't really want to be there anyway, I just wanted to go home. My 3-year-old spills chocolate milk on a seat, and I lost my mind. You would have thought, the way I started screaming at this kid, you would have thought this kid burnt down my house. That's how bad it was. And so the problem was there's a buffer between calm and losing control, right? There's many different steps in between. It's never just an event. Well, that day I went from 0 to 100 in a second. Like, he spilled chocolate milk. He's 3 years old. Of course he's going to spill stuff. I lost my mind. So my wife, being a good mother, steps in front of me and sort of takes the brunt of it. Well, I don't really care who I yell at this time, so she's going to get it. I start screaming at her. It's a 2-hour ride home from South Jersey to where I live now in North Jersey. And if you ever driven on Garden State Parkway, it's a very large highway. My wife was begging me, to pull over and let her and a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old out on the side of the road. She'll find her own way home. That's how bad it was. Of course, me being a jackass, I'm not going to let that happen. We get home, and I knew there was a problem. Like, I knew that night it was a problem, and I call a police helpline. They set me up with a therapist, they set me up with all this stuff, but it's not happening until the following week. I go back into the department on Monday for what's called a critical incident and stress management debriefing. Usually these things need to happen 48 hours to 72 hours after the event for them to have any effect. This is my department was very insufficient on taking care of people's mental health. We go in there, I do the thing, and I'm sitting in the squad room. Now, what had happened a couple years ago is they took our shotguns out of the cars. I've been shooting a shotgun ever since I was 5 years old. They took our shotguns out of the car because somebody left a round in there, whatever it was. I hear word from one of the lieutenants, oh, we're putting the shotguns back in the car. So I'm thinking, hey, that's great. Some good will come out of this stuff. Oh, yeah, but they're only going in supervisors' cars. Something in that right there set me off because I said to myself, I started screaming at a lieutenant. I'm a patrolman. I start screaming at a lieutenant saying, "You need to tell my wife while you get more protection than I get. It's when I die because you have the shotgun and you're sitting in headquarters with your feet up on your desk." And I just start railing into this guy. And it's so bad that the other officers pick me up and walk me outside because I was going to get fired. That's exactly what was going to happen. So they actually saved me from some really, really bad stuff. That was the last time I ever walked into the police department. And down the rabbit hole I go. I can't sleep, so I'm drinking, right? So I'm just doing anything. I'm doing anything. I go to the psychiatrist, but they're not helping me. They're putting me on medication. They prescribe me the protocol for this type of traumatic stress event is to put you on an anti-anxiety and an antidepressant. They put me on Klonopin, and then they put me on Lexapro. So I do it. But here's the thing: I'm drinking because my mind is going a million miles an hour. I'm not working, so I have idle hands do the devil's work. The Klonopin allows me to get more drunk, quicker with less alcohol. Very dangerous. Don't do this. This is extraordinary. You can kill yourself doing this. But I did it because at this time I didn't care. I'm yelling at my wife. I probably broke 6 or 7 remotes by throwing them at my wife because remember, it's thought, action, nothing in between. I'm calling her names. I actually spit in my wife's face. That's how bad it got. Do you know how demoralizing it is to get spit on? One of the breaking points for me was, my son had all sorts of Nerf guns, all those toys that I had when I was a kid. And my 3-year-old points a Nerf gun at me. Now, there's a maneuver how to disarm a suspect. You do it so many times in the academy. You do it in training. So if somebody's got a gun pointed at you, you sort of do this, and the gun points back. I did that to a 3-year-old because it was autonomous. And
So
I
there's
take
no thought process like, okay, grab the gun and this. This is all just you're just being
it's reactive. So totally reactive. I do this to my son, and now I don't, Eric. I don't know if you have any kids, but there's a look
I don't know.
There's a look in a kid's face when he's scared. Like my kids, some kids will just burst out crying. My kids get this look, and it's just like this. It's this blank look, and that's the look my son's giving me. And I know I scared the shit out of him by what I just did. So I see this look on his face, and it scares me probably worse than it scared him. I snap the Nerf gun in two, and I throw it in the garbage, and I walk out of the house. I drive to a wooded area. I turn off my cell phone. Now, here's the backstory to that. I never carried my off-duty weapon. My off-duty weapon was a Smith & Wesson Chief Special nickel plate. It's a beautiful gun, but it fits very perfectly on my ankle. I was not sleeping, so I was getting paranoid. I'm drinking all the time. I drive out to a wooded area. I have my gun on me.
You'll take a Klonopin too at this
Oh
point.
yeah.
Still do
Oh
it.
yeah. I'm doing all that stuff. And I drive out to a wooded area, turn my cell phone off. I walk 2 miles and I go into this wooded area because I didn't want to be found. And I sat there for 3 days up against a tree, day and night, with a bottle of water. I knew people were going to start looking for me. I didn't want to be found. My car was very far away. And I sat there and I thought, and the funny thing is the longer I thought, it was an interesting time because you're talking, it was, I want to say it's probably July. And the trees are rustling, animals are moving around in the woods. And it's weird because, and people are going to think I'm nuts when I say this, but the forest has a way of talking to you. If you listen, the trees rustling, obviously I can't understand what it's saying, but they have a way of talking to you. So for whatever reason, I get up, I walk out, I get in my car, and I walk in my house like nothing happened. And nobody really says anything to me. Nobody says, "Where were you?" Nobody, this is just me. I know I'm becoming a monster, and I don't want to do this to my kids, and I don't want to do this to my wife. So mind you, I'm downstairs. My family's upstairs sleeping. I start having these suicidal thoughts. I start thinking that, you know what, I'm turning into such a monster. Those lies that you tell yourself, you know, the world's better off without me. Let me just take myself out. And there's a misconception that cops get 3.5 times their salary if they die while they're active. Well, not with suicide, but we don't know that. We think that's the way that it is. So at about 2 o'clock in the morning, I make the decision. This is going to be the end. I'm taking myself out. I'm not living like this. I'm not prepared to sit there and turn into this person. So I go into my office, which is just a converted bedroom right near where the downstairs living area. I grab my gun. I write a note. I write down bank codes. I write down how sorry I am that I'm not this person that you thought I was. I basically say I'm sorry to every person who meant anything to me, especially my children. I hope my children remember me fondly. Put the paper on the ground and pull my gun out, and I put that gun square in my mouth. To this day, I can still feel, you know, the feeling of metal in your tongue. I can still feel that metal. The sights up against my teeth. I take the hammer. It's a double action gun. I take the hammer. I cock the hammer back. I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm ready to go. I used to have a wall of all these pictures of all these, like my college degree, my high school diploma, pictures of people that I cared about, pictures of my kids, and I'm looking at it. I'm looking at this wall, and I'm thinking to myself, God, you are such a disappointment. You are such a. This is how it ends. This is how it ends. And I hold that gun in my mouth for about 20 minutes. I'm crying. I'm reliving the incident. After about 20 minutes, it was this odd thing. Something happened to me where I just had this moment. Like I pulled the gun out of my hand, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Your kids are right upstairs. Your wife's right upstairs. One of your kids could find you down here with half your head missing, and now you're creating generational trauma." Like I had that moment of clarity, right? And alcoholics have that moment of clarity. Um, and then I sort of just like I limped along. So I shipped my gun off out of my house. I didn't talk to really anybody. That's the problem with something like this. You're embarrassed by the way you're acting. People are calling. Some people are calling to check on you. Some people are not calling to check on you, and you're kind of pissed at that. But I didn't pick up the phone anyway, and I didn't know what to say to them. I never picked up the calls of the people who were calling me. I didn't know what to say to them. So the people who didn't call, they don't know what to say to me. So while I was pissed at that time, I understand it. I get it. I understand why they didn't call. There's many different ways to kill yourself, even though I didn't have my gun. The one guy I still talk with, I was like, look, I can't have my gun in my house. I didn't explain why. He didn't question it. He just took my gun. I put it in a lockbox, and off it goes. I tried to hang myself, and I'm a fat fucker, so excuse my language. So I didn't realize the rope that I used couldn't hold me, so it snapped. It choked me out first, snapped. I hit the ground, and then I woke up 3 hours later with a massive headache and a lump on my head. I've tried to drink myself to death. I've tried to take pills. I've tried to hang myself with a dog leash. I've sat on the end of bridges and hoping that it was far enough down that it wouldn't hurt too bad. Now, I'm pissed, like, especially like when I hung myself, I got up and I said, you know what? You're a failure at life, and now you're a failure at death. You can't even kill yourself correctly. Like I was a failure all the way around. Then came the inevitable news by my therapist that they said, listen, man, you're knee deep in post-traumatic stress. You're done being a cop, buddy. And I broke, like that just broke me. Cause I spent a good portion of my life, working towards this thing that I loved, and it's over, and now I'm 30. I was 38 I was 38 or 39 at the time. What the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? I got 2 small kids. I was like, Jesus. But here's the one thing I do know. I started going to group therapy, and I started getting involved with other officers who were in shootings. And I realized they had the same thing that I had. They had the same problems I had. I wasn't alone. I wasn't that person that was the weakest person in the world. Because that's what I thought. I thought I'm the weakest person in the world. So I checked myself into rehab at my doctor's suggestion. And but that was an interesting thing because I had to be willing to lose everything. I had to be willing to take the leap of faith that my wife and kids weren't going to be there when I got home. Even though I was doing this for them, I had to be willing to tell myself that I'm willing to give up everything in order to try to get better. And I go to rehab. But I go to rehab. I made the choice to go to rehab, and I went in rehab sober. I went in there with 5 books. I went in there with a couple notebooks. But I didn't look like a cop. My hair had grown out. I had, facial hair, which cops at the time weren't allowed to have. And I got sober. And November 26th, 2013 was when I entered rehab, and that's it. I'm done. I don't have any use for it. I am not a good person when I drink. I found that out. So then there's the climb back. Now, all of a sudden, I got to retire at the age of 39.
Could I just ask one question?
Sure.
Real quick. You said, though, you did it for them.
Yes.
You didn't do it for yourself?
I did because I didn't like the person I was. And so shit flows downhill, right? Kids are below you. So all this bad behavior that I was exhibiting, I watched this in my family. I come from a long line of alcoholics. And I've watched this where it's generational. The grandfather's an alcoholic, the father's an alcoholic, the son becomes an alcoholic. So while you're right, yes, you do get sober for yourself to become a better person, but ultimately you want to be a better person so you're there for your family. So you're there for them. So you can be the dad that you didn't have. Right? You can be the dad that you always wanted, or the dad that you
I wasn't asking you that question like in a wrong way, like, oh, you're supposed, because that's what they always say, like, go and know for yourself. Because the last time that I went in, it was actually for someone else, but it got me though sober, and then I eventually started loving myself. But
Right.
I was the same way, so I was just curious on that. That's what I meant though by that. But no, go on.
I'm fortunate in the fact that I don't do well in enclosed spaces. All right. I did not do well in rehab. I did the 12-step there, but at the time I didn't really believe in the 12-step. I do now but here's the problem with the way they teach. Here's my problem with the way they teach 12-step. I think the time frame is too abbreviated. You're supposed to do this by this by this. I am 11 years sober, 11 and a half years sober. And I'm just now getting to those certain steps, and the initial one is, surrender to your higher power. Well, I didn't start doing that until about 3 or 4 years ago. So that's why I'm saying the time frame on it is a little skewed. You just got to have the guts and the resilience in order to stick with it, because it does work. It really does work. It just didn't work for me in the time frame that we're giving me. So I climbed myself out, and in June of 2014, I officially retire on what's known as an accidental disability pension, and I'm no longer a police officer. I have to find a new way in the world. I'm still having the occasional nightmares, but they become less. So here's what happens. You were having nightmares 7 days a week. Now you might have them 3 days a week, or you might have them 2, and it just keeps going down and down. Now I'm back, I'll have the occasional nightmare, but I have different tools on how to deal with them now. It's not as severe as it once was. And, I took every job I could that was as far away from police work as I possibly could. I was angry still. I was so mad at this guy, Anthony Vocaturo, because I feel like he ruined my life. He took my livelihood away, took a job away that I was really proud of doing. And there's a picture of me and my oldest son. He had to be less than 3. And he's sitting in my lap with my hat on, with my police hat on. We wore trooper hats. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like Superman to my son. It was one of the coolest pictures ever, and I'll never have that, So I was very angry, and I just walked away from police work and tried to put myself as far away from it as possible. The clean cut look, I never had again. I always had a beard. It's always, I covered myself in tattoos, and I just was trying to become somewhat of a chameleon and try to hide what I was. Didn't work real well. You know, I still had moments. My wife and I struggled back and forth because she remembers me in the worst of the worst times. So, it's not. I talk about this very often because it's one of my favorite things. So, did you ever see a movie called Joe versus the Volcano with Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, Lloyd Bridges?
No, I don't believe so. No.
All right, so it's supposed to be a comedy, right? But
Okay.
what it is about this guy he was a fireman and he did some big things in a firehouse, but he's just living this mundane life. And the thing is if you watch that movie on its surface, it's just, like a romantic comedy. It's half romantic comedy, but there's a symbol in it. So it's this you see it in the very beginning when he's walking into this factory that he works in, and it's long, crooked road in order to go in. And that symbol keeps playing itself throughout the movie. The journey out of darkness is that proverbial crooked road. And he even says it at the end. He goes, it's been a long, crooked road. Sometimes you're going to go forward. Sometimes you're going to go back. Sometimes you're going to go to the side. And I watch that movie now with different eyes. I think the movie was either late 80s or very early 90s. I watch that movie now, and it's so important to me because that's what life is. Life is this long, crooked, bumpy road. Sometimes you go up, sometimes you go down. But you have to be willing to stay on the path because that path is going to lead you to where you need to be, you know? So, I slowly but surely tried to just keep my head above water. That's all I really wanted to do. And I did for a long time. Until one day I was thinking, I became very detached, and I was thinking about Anthony Vocaturo. And I started thinking about the thought popped into my head. What did he have to go through? What kind of pain did he have to feel in order to shoot at police twice? And what I did when I thought about that is I took away all the man's power. I took away all of his power that he was holding over me for 5 years. And then I started to have a little bit of sympathy and a little bit of pity for him. So his pain must have been unbearable. And I knew, listen, I was smart enough to know that he wasn't shooting at Kevin Donaldson. He was shooting at a police officer. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die because him and his girlfriend broke up. I get it. I get it. And before, where I used to hate him, I look at him now and I probably, if I ever came face to face with him, and hopefully one day I do, I think it'll be very healing for me. I'd probably give him a big hug and I'd thank him because I do believe that guy was an angel in my life because he set me on a journey and he set me on a path that was very hard and very difficult. But he also put me exactly where I was supposed to be. He stepped in at just the right time. I look back now and maybe I was never meant to be a cop. Maybe I was meant to do what I do now, you know?
Yeah,
And I
or
had to
maybe you were though meant to be a cop, and that was meant to happen to get you to do what you're doing right now.
Right. There was a set of events set in motion that put me in a place where I need to be. So maybe rather than looking at Anthony angrily, maybe I should look at him with love and gratitude. So I have gratitude for him. And listen, I'm not happy. I certainly don't suggest getting shot at to put you on the path you need to be on. But looking back, it was probably the best thing for me.
Yeah, Kevin, hate, like when you have hate though for someone though, that's like an emotion, that's a draining emotion. That when you could actually, for me anyway, when I'm not like, because I used to be like, oh, I hate this person. It drains you. It's too much. And like when you could actually, I mean, like purely, not just say it, like you feel it. Like I could tell you feel it. Just like, when you were reaching out to the bully and all that, you being the bully, reaching out to that guy, that forgiveness stuff is very healing.
For
It's very healing.
Forgiveness is a gift from God. Not everybody is given that gift. And if you have the ability, and I know there's a lot of people out there, there's certain things that are unforgivable. I got to be honest with you. There is nothing in the world that you cannot forgive. Whether you have the ability to it, because there were some things that happened to me when I was a child that I was having a very difficult time forgiving.
What about betrayal?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things I was having. I'm like, yeah, I knew I just wasn't ready, but I also knew the power of forgiveness. When I let go of all that anger for Anthony Vocaturo, I knew that I knew the weight that was lifted off of me. So I know the power of forgiveness. I just can't
Mhm.
get there. I can't force this. It has to come. And thankfully, very recently it has. And again, it released a humongous weight off of my shoulders. I was carrying that around for what? For what? I can't change it. I can't unring that bell. So why am I carrying it around? It's time to let it go. And I'm a better person for it. I still have my moments.
Yeah.
I still have my my moments of sadness, of anxiety. Um, but it's a familiar emotion now. I've been there before. So when we experience an emotion for the first time, we revert to childhood. All right. So when some people get hurt, or when a kid gets hurt, they're going to cry. When a kid throws a tantrum because he gets something taken away from him, he just yells and screams and pounds his fists on the floor. And a lot of this stuff happens to me. When you experience something as an adult for the first time, especially something, that you've never had any type of experience with, you're going to revert to how you would do it as a child. And that was me. That was me. I knew I had all these things going on in my head in my darkest of times. And what did I do? I lashed out. I acted irrationally. I pounded my fist. I became aggressive. So I look at that now, and when I have those moments, I just know how to deal with them a little bit better.
For like any of the viewers though that are watching though, who are struggling out there, is this something that just naturally happened, or like were you really working and digging hard on yourself? Like, what was some key things that helped you out?
I leaned on people who had been there. Okay, I really did lean on a lot of people who I felt comfortable enough, because getting help from another person is a trust issue, right? Of course, I have trust issues.
Mm,
The trust issue comes down to, do I trust you enough to tell you what's going on inside of my head? And listen, we lose a lot of police officers to suicide. This is why, because they don't trust anybody. We're just mistrustful by nature. Do I trust you enough to tell you what's going on in my head, and knowing that you're not going to judge me, you're not going to turn me in, and this isn't going to become the worst mess that I got myself into and regret my decision of ever speaking to you? So that's the issue. So people who are in that dark hole, find somebody you can trust, somebody who's not going to judge you. And if you can't find that person, listen, I made every wrong decision known to man. I'm telling you, I have made every bad decision that you could possibly make. Reach out to me. We'll sit and have a discussion. You know how easy it is to get to me. All right. You message me. I called you. I go by my gut. If my gut's telling me to talk to this person, I'll talk to you. I'm an idiot. I give my cell phone out to most people.
yeah,
And
that's me
sometimes,
too. Yeah, you gotta watch. You gotta watch though sometimes.
yeah, one of our mutual friends is probably a good suggestion why you don't give your phone number out to everybody.
Yeah.
But my thought is I'd rather you have my phone number and abuse it than not have any phone number at all. And then maybe, just maybe, you can get to the place where you can start to heal. You can start to have some hope. And that's kind of what happened to me. I got to that point. I got to that point through leaning on the right people, to trusting the right people, and finding some sort of peace and healing.
Yeah. I mean, you got it. I always say though that the true tough guy, like, because I grew up in a neighborhood though where it was just like, we looked at the true tough guy was the fighters, like it's a fighting neighborhood. Everyone's just fighting. Oh, that guy's the tough guy. That guy. Now I'm at the point where the true tough guy is the one that could actually open up and talk about that shit. Because the person who's in the bar and in a conversation with someone and they're throwing a punch though at someone, that's insecurity. You know, when you could actually have the courage to actually open up and talk to someone. I'm just saying what helped me. Like if I
Yeah.
kept that silent, then a bomb's gonna blow up because I was a vicious addict. I mean, I like it, this I'm talking about you. I don't need to get into what my situation is, but that's what helped me the most was finally being able to, I was so like everything you said, the embarrassment, all of it. But once though you release it, and not to mention, I remember my old house when I was engaged, I was just like, how could I ever know how am I going to get out of this? Like you feel stuck and stuff like that. But when you just make that leap, isn't it funny though, Kevin, that we're embarrassed, but we're also like embarrassed. I don't know if you went through this, like to go to like rehab to actually get better, like, but yeah, people like you'll still, that's the sickness that we're in at that time. Like we think it's an embarrassment to go and get that help, but it's not an embarrassment though to go and keep copping the drug you need or the drink you need and causing more havoc. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
it
we'll
took
think
me.
of it, yeah.
It was more than that too, because I couldn't go around crowds. I didn't want to go out to eat. I never have my back to the door. Even today, I don't have my back to the door. It took me 10 years to go into a professional sports stadium, and I love sports. Um, I didn't return until 2023, until recently. So it's a long process, but here's the thing that I've learned. We spend our whole lives trying to connect to people, trying to make some sort of friendship, some sort of commonality amongst people. But if I sat here and told you, Eric, uh, as a police officer, I personally saved 20 lives. I got this many stolen cars. I've made this many arrests. You're going to look at me and you're going to go, well, that's cool. But do you feel that distance? So you feel that distance in between us. Now, if I tell you, yeah, I've had a gun in my mouth, I've had a rope around my neck, I've drank so much that I woke up on the front lawn. I was a horrible husband to my wife. I was a horrible father to my child. Now, all of a sudden, people will start going, they'll lean into you. So, what I've learned is, you can impress people with your successes, but you really want to connect to them, you connect to people through vulnerabilities. That's the
And
only way to
honesty
connect
and
people.
pure sheer honesty. And that's what
Yeah.
connected me to you is when I first saw you, I was like, this gentleman is genuine and just honest. Like I'm very good at reading people. And I don't know. It's like you don't have, not meaning not a filter in a bad way. I could just tell that you're just, you just let it out, man, and just tell it like it is. And let the chips fall where they fall. And I'm saying though, that is that's the road though to being healed, letting it out, not holding it in, letting it out. And that's why I reached out to you because I could tell genuine from not, and you are very, very genuine. And I think that's what got you to where you are because now you are, you're just letting it all out, and people need to hear this type of stuff because like you said before when you found out, oh wait a minute, I'm not alone, there are other people out there though that are like that, there's tons of people out there like that, tons. So anyone out there struggling, you're not alone, as and you just make that leap and talk to someone. And I love how you said find somebody, just perfect answer, find somebody you can trust and talk to and let it out. I mean,
Find it. There's a lot of, so I'll get a lot of messages on social media, and they'll say, I'm afraid to say this, I'm afraid to say this, and how do you do it? I tell them, I said, because nobody in this world can ever judge me as hard as I judge myself. And it took me a long time. This did not happen overnight. It took me a long time to get to that way, but I've made friends from coast to coast of random people. And it's a weird way circles work around. So I'm going to go back. After I started the Suffering podcast, people would reach out after that, and especially after Soft White Underbelly too. A lot of people reached out on that one. I met this guy he was a former Dallas transit police officer. His name's Chad, and he was there during the Dallas 5. So we're just talking. He was having a tough time, and we always kept in contact for 3 years now. We just kept in contact. Now, totally clandestine to that, this happened numerous times. There was another guy named Josh, retired military, just having a tough time, just needed somebody to talk to. It's something about the calming ear of a stranger. And I would talk to him. I'd give him my phone number, and we just have these conversations. Maybe, when they're in their worst to worst times, probably spoke 2 or 3 times a week. After that, maybe, once every couple months. So I get this picture one day on my cell phone, and it's Chad and Josh.
yeah.
It was more than that too, because I couldn't go around crowds. I didn't want to go out to eat. I never have my back to the door. Even today, I don't have my back to the door. It took me 10 years to go into a professional sports stadium, and I love sports. I didn't return until 2023, until recently. So it's a long process, but here's the thing that I've learned. We spend our whole lives trying to connect to people, trying to make some sort of friendship, some sort of commonality amongst people. But if I sat here and told you, Eric, as a police officer, I personally saved 20 lives. I got this many stolen cars. I've made this many arrests. you're going to look at me and you're going to go, well, that's cool. But do you feel that distance? So you feel that distance in between us. Now, if I tell you, yeah, I've had a gun in my mouth, I've had a rope around my neck, I've drank so much that I woke up on the front lawn. I was a horrible husband to my wife. I was a horrible father to my child. Now, all of a sudden, people will start going, they'll lean into you. So what I've learned is, you can impress people with your successes, but you really want to connect to them, you connect to people through vulnerabilities. That's the only
And
way to
honesty
connect
and
people.
pure sheer honesty. And that's what
Yeah.
connected me to you is when I first saw you, I was like, this gentleman is genuine and just honest. Like I'm very good at reading people. And I don't know. It's like you don't have, not meaning not a filter in a bad way. I could just tell that you're just, you just let it out, man, and just tell it like it is. Let the chips fall where they fall. And I'm saying, though, that is that's the road though to being healed, letting it out, not holding it in, letting it out. And that's why I reached out to you because I could tell genuine from not, and you are very, very genuine. And I think that's what got you to where you are because now you are, you're just letting it all out, and people need to hear this type of stuff because like you said before when you found out, oh wait a minute, I'm not alone, there are other people out there though that are like that, there's tons of people out there like that, tons. So anyone out there struggling, you're not alone, and you just make that leap and talk to someone. And I love how you said find somebody, just perfect answer, find somebody you can trust and talk to and let it out. I mean,
Find it. There's a lot of I'll get a lot of messages on social media, and they'll say, I'm afraid to say this, I'm afraid to say this, and how do you do it? I tell them, I said, because nobody in this world can ever judge me as hard as I judge myself. And it took me a long time. This did not happen overnight. It took me a long time to get to that way, but I've made friends from coast to coast of random people, and it's a weird way circles work around. So I'm going to go back. After I started the Suffering podcast, people would reach out after that, and especially after Soft White Underbelly too. A lot of people reached out on that one. I met this guy he was a former Dallas transit police officer. His name's Chad, and he was there during the Dallas 5. So we're just talking. He was having a tough time, and we always kept in contact for 3 years now. We just kept in contact. Now, totally clandestine to that, this happened numerous times. There was another guy named Josh, retired military, just having a tough time, just needed somebody to talk to. It's something about the calming ear of a stranger. And I would talk to him. I'd give him my phone number, and we just have these conversations. Maybe, when they're in their worst to worst times, probably spoke 2 or 3 times a week. After that, maybe, once every couple months. So I get this picture one day on my cell phone, and it's Chad and Josh sitting at the same table. And I go, how do you guys know each other? I said, what's going on? And he goes, no, you don't understand. This is what happened. They were at this event together. They're from different states. They were at this event together called Mighty Oaks. I think that's what it was. And it's assigned seating. Both of the guys were there alone. They get assigned right next to each other. My buddy Chad, who I've never met in person until recently, starts talking about me to this guy, Josh. Josh goes, how do you know Kevin? I know Kevin. I got his phone number right here. So these are 2 guys from different parts of the world who I've spoken to, and they trusted me enough with their darkness that they were able just to get a little bit of clarity and go through. And now they found each other. So it's a weird circle in this world of 7 billion people that these 2 people find each other, and somehow I'm their common connection. And it's humbling to me. It gives me a good feeling. So that same purpose that I felt as a police officer, I feel in just working with that one person who, and listen, I'm not one of these guys who go out and say, oh, I'm a coach. I'm going to help you coach your life. I'm going to tell you, I'm not that guy. I'm not trying to sell. I'm telling, I'm not selling. I know too many people are telling, they're not telling.
Well, that's why I reached out to you, because I could tell who's selling and who's telling. So,
so I'm not selling anything. I don't want anything, but so that's not 100% true. It's not 100% true. So whenever I talk to somebody who gets through their darkness, this is exactly what I say to them. I said, you understand my help is not free, right? My help, there is debit to what I'm telling you. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? And I said, when you feel up to it, you need to find somebody who is in the place that you were in. And you need to do the same thing for them that I just did for you. That's the payback for it. That's the only payback. And if
Yeah.
you don't do it, there's no way for me to find out if you don't do it. But if you don't do it, karma's a bitch. So just
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's so gonna, or they're not gonna though, really, if they don't do it and pay it forward. To me, that's what helps me is paying it. Like I had people who helped me out big time. My friend Olin, God bless him, out in Philadelphia. Without him, I don't know where I would be. And he would like say the same thing. And speaking about going back to those 12-step things, yeah, that whole time thing, I 100% agree with you. But I used to always be like, well, why do I need to go? I don't feel like using it. He's like, well, you need to go to help someone else out. But I have my own issues too, though, with all of that as well. Because if you look at them, it's all about the people, though, that started, though, going and changing ways and saying time, whatever. No time limit on it. It's just, work through it the right way. And it's just basically about being an honest, good person and then, help others through your experience. That's all that goes down to. And I haven't been in a meeting in years. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well,
I talk to good quality people and I have a very small circle now. Yeah, and that seems to small circle because I'm guarded. I'm guarded in a way too. I watch who I let in now, just from experience.
so the big part of that is reaching out to somebody and going to help them is it's part of the healing process. I found this out. So when and I don't look for accolades, I don't look for any of that stuff, but when I reach somebody and I can see the change in them and I can see the change for the positive, now all of a sudden you're like, damn, that's some powerful shit. And then you start feeling better and you start getting some hope. So a lot of people will say that hope is the cure for depression. It's not. It's not. You can have all the hope in the world and you're still going to be depressed. So
Yeah.
what the antithesis to depression is purpose. All right. So if you're reaching out and helping people and you have a purpose, well, guess what? How are you going to be depressed and you have a purpose?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons people get emotional support animals, which I don't really believe in all that much, but let's say they do. They have something to take care of. They have a purpose to take care of. So they're not going to harm themselves, because if they harm themselves, that thing that they love so much, because pets are unconditional love, that thing that they love so much is going to die. And that's the last thing that they want to do. But all too often you see people with young kids, but they'll never leave the kids alone. They'll think the wife is there or the mother if they're separated, and they're going to find some peace that way. But stuff never works out.
Yeah.
Because with the gentleman who I started the Suffering podcast with is a gentleman named Mike Falaise. All right. So Mike was retired Lyndhurst lieutenant. So you have to be ready at any moment, because life kind of throws you curveballs. And you think you learn to hit the curveball, but sometimes they're rough. So I started this podcast. It was kind of a new purpose. It was kind of a way for me to get it out, to reach people, to help people. And on episode 9, I bring this guy in who I was in group therapy with. I've known him for 25 years. I used to work with his brother before I was a cop. And we come in and we hit all the marks. I mean, we have the chemistry together, and it was a wonderful thing. And after episode 9, I said, hey, dude, you got to come in. You got to be my co-host. He was all into it. So we record and we're making headway. In May of 2022, we go on video and we're hitting all the marks. We're top 1%, or we're actually we hover between 0.5% and 1% of podcasts, and things are going great. But one of the things I saw with Mike, and I saw it, but I was sort of blind to it at the time. I started to become so focused on trying to be this voice for change, especially in the mental health field, and exhibiting that post-traumatic success. My partner, my best friend, and my brother was sliding bad. He was just, he had a lot of issues going on in his life. And I missed some things. So on May 9th, 2024, we recorded that night on May 8th. We left the studio and we said our goodbyes in the parking lot as we usually do. It was about 9:00 at night. He turns to me, and we always told each other we loved each other, right? We did. We really did love each other. And he looked at me and he said, hey, Kev, I love you. Just like that. I could tell you right where it is. I could see his face. I didn't know that was the last time I was going to talk to him. He goes home, and I have full recall. I'm the last person to see him. He goes home. He's in such a depressed state that in the early morning hours, about 12:30 a.m., from the best we can understand, my partner, my best friend, Mike Falaise, died from a single self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. He took his life.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And that damn near broke me. Because here I am focused, and I got that tunnel vision. You know, that thing that they tell us not to have in the police department or police in the academies. Don't get tunnel vision. You have to sort of keep your peripheral vision open. So Mike was in a spot that I was in. Only problem was Mike wasn't willing to reach out. Mike wasn't willing to get better. He was comfortable in being that victim and not the victor. But here's what Mike's death did to me. And listen, this came after many, many months of thought. When I was in my darkest of times, when I had guns in my mouth, I could only see right in front of me. I could see like this, right? I didn't care about my kids who would grow up without a father. My wife had to raise the kids alone. I didn't care about that stuff. I wasn't even seeing that stuff. Mike was right there as well. So after I get through my darkness, my peripheral vision, I'd say, is about here. When Mike took his life, my peripheral vision is back here. Because he did it, and I know everything about his last moments. I'm watching the collateral damage. I watch it in real time. The people he hurt, the people he left behind, the people who are never going to see him, who never got to say goodbye, all this stuff. I see all that collateral damage. So here's the thing of that. If you think the world's better off without you, you are lying to yourself in the worst possible way, because it's not. It's not. There's nobody in this world that would be better being taken off. And I don't care who they are. I don't care. There's a purpose for everybody. But the difference with Mike is everything I talk about on my show and other shows on how to heal. I always make the joke that if you told me that the path to healing was to shove my own head up my ass, I would have started stretching tomorrow. I've sat in harmonic eggs. I've done Reiki. I've done spiritual healing. I would have done anything that, and Mike talked about it, but he never did it. He never lived it. So that's the big difference. So all I can do is carry on and go harder to the pain, right? I'm gonna be that proverbial pain in the ass, and it's changed a lot of the ways I did things. I used to say, "Hey, listen, I can't help you unless you want to be helped." That's changed a little bit. I'm gonna be a pain in the ass, and I'm gonna be on top of you. I'm gonna be there. I'd rather you hate me, and I'd rather lose you as a friend, but you still be alive in order to hate me and not be my friend, rather than you be dead and still my friend. Because what's the point of that? And I should have done that with him. What I should have done with him, and I said, listen, you need to go get some help, brother. Go get some help. You can't come in here until you go get help. This seat will always be here for you. So go get yourself right. And I want you clean, sober, and clear right next to me. And let's ride this train all the way to the end. But I didn't do it because I was afraid to lose a friend. I was afraid he would tell me to go F myself. I was afraid that his life was imploding so much that the show was the only thing left for him that gave him any sort of purpose. And I was afraid if I took the show away from him, he was going to do something stupid like that. Well, guess what? He did it anyway. So I failed. And listen, I failed him. I'm going to tell you right now, I failed him. I've spent many times in quiet thought about this. I've wasted a lot of tears on this because he ain't coming back. So all I got to do is just keep forging forward and make sure I don't make that same mistake twice.
Okay, but you say though that you failed him though, but you wasn't even though trying though to really though live it and open up and talk to you. So how though did you fail him?
You know, in sports, when they say you're supposed to leave it out on the field, leave it all out on the field. It's what I've heard since I was a little kid. I look back and while I did what I could do, I didn't leave it all out on the field. What I should have done is I should have kicked the shit out of him. I really should have. I should have physically assaulted him and beat him bloody and then take him to rehab. I should have. Like that's something I could have done. And we actively, so I have a group of friends. I have a real close group of
But did
friends.
you know at the time, though? Did you have a hint, though, of what he was going to do at the time?
I never thought he would do that, obviously. But here's how I thought it was going to not end, but he was going to wake up. I thought he's either going to get in an accident. Hopefully he didn't take anybody's life. I hope he didn't he didn't kill himself doing it. That's what I thought was going to happen. There was just going to be some event like that, and it was going to get him sober, because that's what I thought it would take. I never thought something like this was going to happen, but it did. And things will be different. Things will never be the same. But if he would have just hung on a little bit longer, and I came up after he passed, after he took his life, I came up with a concept that the next day I did an Instagram live to tell the audience what happened. And I had to wait because his father hadn't been told yet. And I had to wait to tell the audience. And on that thing, I said, listen, whatever you're thinking about doing, whatever thoughts are going on in your head, just don't do it today. Just let's not do this today. And then this thing started where people just started saying, yeah, not today, not today, not today. And and I've been using that ever since. It's like, whatever's going on in your head, let's just say not today. Let's deal with that tomorrow. Because guess what? Tomorrow the sun's going to rise. It's going to rise as sure as anything. And if it doesn't rise, we're all screwed. So we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And you might look at it with different eyes. You might look at it with a little bit more clarity going, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? Because suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary condition.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you there, though, man. And I lost friends to addiction, though, as well. And similar story with my best friend, Dave Flannery, who I tattooed on my back. I saw him that night, and they call it survivor's guilt. And I'm like, why didn't I just pull him in the car? Why didn't I just pull him in the car? But a lot of that, though, the only reason why I asked you, like, you can't keep blaming yourself on that, too, at the same time. I mean, could you really be around someone 24/7 and do this and that? And I know, I get it. You wanted to beat the shit out of him, drag him to rehab, this and that. Looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. But, I mean, I have someone that always is always asking for help, but they're not really. Like, how many times, could you, hey, all right, sure, go to rehab, but then they don't listen. They don't want to go to the rehab, but they say that they want help. I mean, and I don't know, man. It's hard. I lost a lot of friends to drugs and stuff. So I just and I
It's
beat
hard to live
myself.
with. It's hard to live with the coulda, woulda, shouldas.
Yes, yes. Me and my brother, who I was telling you about before backstage, which I wanted to ask this question too, which I will, but that's what we were talking about is like, what if I did this with Dave? What if I did that with Dave right before here? But I wanted to I just ended not to get off the subject and RIP to your friend. And I'm so sorry though for your loss. But my brother, okay, he runs the probation department in this whole county. And he said that he's seen a lot of dark stuff and he became desensitized. So with your whole PTSD thing, and I mean, everything you explained already, I mean, is already whatever. But he told me, and I don't know if it's just him, he became like numb to seeing like stuff like that. Like, yeah, it doesn't bother me. I'm just numb to that. Is that a thing? Like that?
So what happens is police officers we need coping mechanisms. You got to remember, police officers see things that people aren't supposed to see. We see dead bodies, we see suicides, we see children, dead children, and all that stuff takes a toll on you. But here's the problem: when you're a police officer, you might see somebody who, like, there's one in particular, a guy put a 30-30 rifle in his mouth. It's a big round, so there's a lot of percussion, and it pretty much mushroomed his head. I saw that, and then I had to go help somebody find their dog. Okay. So I went from a blood-soaked mess to go in a backyard trying to get a dog. And so you have to shut it down real quick. You have to bury it deep. Here's the problem with police officers. You learn really well how to do that at work, and then you start bringing that home. Right. And that's how you deal with things at home. And it's not healthy. It's really, really not healthy. It's not a healthy way to live, because here's what's going to happen. Stuff will eventually start bubbling up, and it's going to hit you at the worst possible, most inconvenient time in your life. You bury something deep enough, it has a way of regurgitating when it's time. Unless you're able. So I've said this more times than I can, because I believe this, that we're given a glass We're given a glass. And in that glass is the amount of pain, suffering, and hurt you can take. And you don't know how big your glass is, but we're given it at birth. And you just keep filling it in and filling it in and filling it in. If you don't learn to empty that glass, the glass is going to spill over, because that's what happened to me. The glass just spilled all over the table. So I've spent the second half of my, and I say the second half of my life because it's post-police, the second half of my life constantly learning how little techniques on how to empty that glass. I meditate every day. I do cold plunge. I exercise, every single morning. I talk. I'm vulnerable. I let it out. And guess what? I can punch you in the mouth if you want to make fun of me. I'd rather not do that. I'd rather hey, listen, let's talk. Let's talk. Because you get a lot of trolls on something like Soft White Underbelly or the other one, Jubilee, the one cop versus 20 criminals. That's got 4.5 million views, and that changes everything. But you get a lot of trolls out there who just don't get it, who just don't understand it. They try to be rude. They try to get your goat. They try to get a rise out of you. And it's very insensitive rather than being encouraging.
Yeah, I just pray for them.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I do. I just like, hey, you know what? You got some issues. Good luck.
That's all that is, because I can never even imagine myself just going on and just be like, well, like, so that just makes me, whatever I see, to me, they're just giving themselves away when they're acting like that. There's something going on wrong with them, and I pray for them.
You're telling me exactly who you are if you're going to sit there and listen, but not hear.
Exactly. And then take the time though to write, and that's something they'll discourage. And it's, they just, they're sick. And I don't mean like sickos like in the head. I mean like they're sick, like still like it's that sickness like in their mind that they need help, and they don't even realize it probably. So they just, they become as someone though who I like very much told me to call it computer balls, and they just throw it though out there. And for some reason that makes them feel better. Just a different way of bullying, but I mean, but they give themselves away though. Like that's how I looked at it. I'm not gonna lie to you. When I started doing this 3 years ago, I used to tell people, "I'll meet you here right now." Let's. It took some time. It took some time, and I started this like when I was still in my first year of like sobriety, which was wild. So, but now I'm I just think it's as life goes on, I just certain lessons like I listen instead of just being like, I got to get this out or get that out, or I got to talk. And like, I just listen and I find out more lessons. And that's the thing. They just,
what technique works a lot? I'm going to give this away, and I shouldn't give this away, but it's a great technique because I use it on my kids and I use it on adults. So for those people who have kids and your kid says, so I'll do it two ways. So if a kid comes up to you and says, "Daddy, I want the new PlayStation." So you ask him, "You want the new play?" You just repeat the last couple words they say. "You want a new PlayStation?" And well, yeah, I want to play this game. I want to do this. You want to play this game? Well, and then what you'll do is you'll go down this rabbit hole and you'll find out what their real objection is. Well, yeah, my friends got it. And I want to go play with my friends. They're my best friends in the world, and this is what they do. Okay, so you just want to go hang out with your friends. Well, I can't afford a PlayStation, but I'll take you over to their house and you can go play, or you can, if that's what you want to do. So it works with adults too. So when somebody says, because I've had this one, "I hate the police." You hate the police? Well, yeah, they did this and they did that. They did this and they did that. And you just keep going down. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to get to the root of the problem. It's a little interrogation technique that is ultra, ultra valuable when you're dealing with somebody who may be a bit irrational.
Mm-hmm. No, I got you there. And what do you to this day? I think we all do. I think until the end of our lives, we could always just keep growing though and learning though. But do you suffer still?
Yes, but I look at it differently. I look at it much differently. We spend a life on trying to avoid suffering. We spend a life on trying to seek comfort. C.S. Lewis puts it that if suffering has such benefits, then ought it not be sought? So I have a tendency to seek out the difficult things, the things that are uncomfortable, the things that are going to make life a little bit difficult. Because here's what happens with that. There is no growth without suffering. There is no Like, you go to the gym, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. But if you go to the gym and it's over time, if you go to the gym today, it's going to hurt. You're not going to see any progress. Tomorrow, if you go to the gym, you're not going to see any progress. In 3 months, all of a sudden, you're going to look down and go, I'm starting to see progress. You're just not going to see it every single day. So we should seek out those things that are hard, and we should never uh, seek comfort. Seeking comfort is going to keep you complacent. It's going to keep you where you are. You don't grow. Can't start a fire without friction. So so I look at suffering different. Yes, I do still suffer. Yes, I still do argue with my wife. I still get mad at my kids. I still get mad at people. I just look at it differently. If I'm getting mad at somebody, well, there's an opportunity to change our relationship for the better. One of my friends or whatever.
Yeah.
And I deal with it differently too. If I get mad at one, especially my close inner circle of friends, if I get mad at them, they're going to get a phone call from me. I'm not going to avoid it. I'm going to go head first into that, and I'm going to make sure it happens.
Yeah, no, I believe that's the way to go. And I look at everything now, like, I call it roadblocks, like, suffering. Like, I look at it more like, no, this is like a roadblock. I say, why? Why am I feeling this? And I think that's kind of like what you're saying. And you look deep into yourself if you have the courage to, and you just own up and you be honest about it, like you just said, or if there's with someone else, you just call them up, tell them on it. I just think pure sheer honesty. Obviously everyone's not 100% honest. There's little things that we keep like, to ourselves at times. But for the most part, I mean, honesty is what saved me. Kevin, I was so bad. Like if I went to lunch and had a salad, I tell you, I had a burger. Like it was just ridiculous. Like the lies that I would say when I was like, my active addiction and stuff. But just being honest finally is what saved me. It's kind of like a cleanse, you
Yeah.
know.
So
I'm sure you can relate.
it's a daily process, it really
That's,
is. But
yeah.
yeah, so listen, onward and upward, and I look forward to the future now where we're a few years back, future wasn't looking so bright. But see, that's the great thing. It could turn around just like that.
Yeah.
You never know. You could be digging in the earth looking for diamonds, and you could be one shovelful away. If you're going to quit, you're never going to find it. You got to be willing to go for however long it's going to take.
Absolutely. And I just want to tell you, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to sit down. And this was, this was fantastic.
I
And I
really
just want,
appreciate you having me, Eric.
I mean, no, I really, and I thank you for coming on. And I just want to let everyone else out there know, let them know where they can find you at. I'll have all the links in the description.
The
They can find
easiest
you.
thing is I'm on all platforms. Most of the platforms I'm Real Kevin Donaldson, but if you go to realkevindonaldson.com, there'll be a jumping off point for everything, all the stuff. You can take a look. I wrote a book a couple years ago or last year, came out, Man, You Are Crazy. That's out there. All the interviews, they're out there, and where you can see me next.
Yep. And folks, just so you know, the links are in the description. Also, his soft white underbelly interview will be in the Joe. Actually, yeah, you got mentioned on Joe Rogan
Yeah.
from Mark from Mark. Yeah, he mentioned talking about you, and well, obviously, yeah, I'm sure you know about that. But and then I watched that episode, and I'm telling you, folks out there right now, if the link is in the description, if you don't feel like typing, Kevin Donaldson, just hit the link, the soft white underbelly link right in that description. Check out that, sit down, and Kevin, unbelievable. Thank you so much, and I can't thank you enough for your time, my friend.
Well, I really appreciate you, Eric. And like I said, I'm glad I trusted my gut when you reached out, because my gut hasn't served me wrong. You're a great guy, and listen, I'm here for you, whatever you need. Okay. I'm always willing to give up anything I got, because if I learned it, it's yours.
Thank you very much, my friend, and we will be staying in touch. I hope so. I mean, you're very genuine, and again, thank you. So I can't thank you. I could just I'll end up saying thank you for an hour. That's how I am. You know what I mean? But this was really incredible, and just thank you, man. Like genuinely, thank you so much.
I appreciate it. And listen, Eric, have a great night, and you got a great show, and I'm looking forward to seeing where you're going to go.
Thank you, my friend. Kevin Donaldson, ladies and gentlemen.